I'm good. How's it going? Not long. I think it wasn't long this time, fortunately. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. Okay. Should we start? Okay. My brother Abdullah Shami, who works for Al Jazeera network, was stationed in Rabah Square, where Morsi supporters were protesting his return since his ouster on July 3rd. Abdullah doesn't work in Egypt. He's actually the channel's uh, head of bureau in West Africa. But he was asked to come to Cairo to cover the events in his own country, and he was there throughout the 40 days of Rabaa camp. And on the day of the dispersal, he was arrested along with many people who stayed in the square during that awful day. Basically, Abdullah was charged. Sorry, he was not charged, but he was facing some accusations as a protester who was there, even though it was very clear that he works as a journalist for Al Jazeera. They confirmed that he works for a journalist. Everyone in the authorities know that he's a journalist. When I go to visit him, they know that Abdullah Shami is the Al Jazeera correspondent. Yet they have refused to officially charge him. We expected that he would be with the 20 Al Jazeera journalists or affiliates who had been recently referred to trial, but that did not turn out to be true, and he remains in a 6-month detention now since August 14th, with no official charge and no any legal procedure. And that is what has been most troubling, is that his case has been in sort of a there's actually no case. That is the real trouble, is that every 45 days his detention gets sort of automatically renewed by some prosecutor or a judge who has taken this order from above, and yeah, that's basically what is happening. And as a result of all of this, Abdullah has decided to begin a hunger strike. It is since 11 days now. He has been on a full hunger strike, protesting this indefinite detention and asking to put an end to it, either to be let go or to be formally charged. Yes, we when the news came out that 20 journalists were have been referred to a trial, including the Al Jazeera correspondents in detention, we expected that Abdullah is going to be among them, because he has been there even before the foreign journalists who have been also unfortunately detained. And we contacted some sources inside the government who did confirm that there was someone with Abdullah's name on the list. On the next day, though, this turned out not to be true, and he wasn't referred to a trial. So like I said, his case remains in this uncertain situation, and there seemed to be no positive end, unfortunately. Yes, Abdullah was arrested that day after the sitting was completely cleared by security forces. It was that evening that the very few people who remained alive in that camp were either let go or arrested, and Abdullah was on his way out of the camp with his wife when they got stopped by a military by a military officer who asked for his ID and his credentials. And when Abdullah showed him his passport, he said, we will have to make our investigations. And he took him to a police station, and he actually said it's a routine and you're going to be let go. But that did not be that wasn't the case. He was sent to another place where all the detainees were being kept, and then 2 days later he called us and said, I am being transferred now to Abu Zabel prison. And yes, yeah, and that has been what's been happening during these 6 months. Yeah. Yes. I think the we have to take into consideration the developments that has happened this year. Egypt has always been not the easiest place to cover for journalists, and neither there hasn't been any leadership that actually fulfilled on its promise to protect the freedom of press and opinion. But it has sort of varied depending on the legitimacy of this government and its will to actually clamp on this free speech. And the current government tends to be the most when it comes to cracking down on press. I think this has been the worst we've seen in decades in Egypt. And I have worked as a journalist in Egypt for 3 years now, and this is without doubt the highest level of crackdown that journalists have seen in Egypt. In 2013, Egypt has become the third most dangerous place on earth to be a journalist. There has been at least 5 journalists killed in 2013. Not to mention dozens have been detained. So the development is that there is a new government, there is a military regime with, unfortunately, a huge local support that gives it legitimacy to crack down on dissent. Abdullah's case has to be taken into the larger picture, which is cracking down on dissent and free speech. It is sort of unfortunate for him that he works for Al Jazeera in Egypt, which is the most critical channel against the regime, and therefore this is why the channel has been targeted. Not even since Rabaa, but before that, on the day Morsi was ousted, the channel's bureau was raided right while the speech General Sisi was delivering. So there has been intentions to crack down on speech and in general, but specifically they have been going after Al Jazeera, and this is why Abdullah's case has become different. Is that there are dozens of journalists who have been detained. Some of them have been let go. There are foreign journalists like Mohammed Fahmy, Peter Greste, but Abdullah has been detained earlier for 6 months before that, and they know that in my opinion, they're settling a score with the Qatari channel and the government. No, he was the only one who was arrested that day, but a cameraman was arrested 2 weeks before Abdullah. Muhammad Badr is a cameraman for the Egypt affiliated sort of the branch, the Egypt branch of Al Jazeera, Mubashir Masr, and he has also been detained since. So that makes it 5 journalists, 3 locals, and two foreigners currently imprisoned. Well, of course, the anniversary will always mean something to everyone who has participated in it or witnessed it, whether, I mean, not just for the locals, but anyone who has witnessed such an event with such magnitude will always remember what it was like. And this is why people took to the streets that day on the third anniversary, despite them knowing that the government is going to crack down on anyone who does not basically raise Sisi's picture on the streets. Those were the only ones who were safe that day. But and any other march which decided that day to protest for the demands of the revolution, to protest against the current regime, was completely was at a target for the security forces, which used really unprecedented levels of violence, and at least 100 were killed that day. So it does mean, I think, for this generation, and it continues to be the inspiration for, you know, the hopes of a better future for Egypt. And the problem is that the current government has sort of been able to, in its way, to rewrite history, and in its way to use the masses for its own agenda, instead of people celebrating or remembering the revolution and pushing forward for the demands which absolutely have not been met by any government that had followed the regime. They actually were mostly on that day on protesting, or not even protesting, celebrating the regime and calling for Sisi to run for presidency. And this is how they have been able to make this day, instead of remembering, the memory of those who were killed that day, and those who hoped for a better Egypt, to actually use it as a day of propaganda for the military. So this is why it was really telling of the current situation in Egypt, and how things have gone from bad to worse over the 3 years, but especially after June 30th, and with the new reemergence of the old regime, and the new legitimacy that the police and the military had gained, just because they sided with the anti-Morsi protesters. They had sort of started a new slate and wiped the old one clean, while no actual justice has been achieved. And this is why anyone who's been following Egypt will notice that Egypt has gone through this really steep hill of things getting worse, and like I said, the security apparatus is re-emerging, and the dissent rushed from has been crushed, and you barely feel that anything happened 3 years ago. Well, I think, like I said, anyone who witnessed 2011 will always believe that such. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I think this current situation, which to me is probably even worse than than before the revolution. There remains little hope for those who did witness the 2011 revolution, because it was really something extraordinary. It was something that that doesn't happen. That just takes huge will and inspiration and what we saw that day is just not going to be forgotten by those who did participate. And despite rewriting the current attempts of rewriting history and the current attempts to earn a new legitimacy by the police and the military, my feeling is that this generation is never going to give up. They're not the sort of the generation to just step aside and give in to the new order. What 2011 changed in people was most of all the mentality, and most of all it was a revolution inside themselves more than anything. And despite the very, very little changes that we've seen, and what even would be a setback to in these 3 years, you just have no other option to stay positive for the future and hope that one day the people will take things into their hands again. Because if there's anything that we could tell from these 3 years is that the people do tend to change moods very quickly, and within a year the Brotherhood became changed from the most popular and the most powerful political organization to perhaps the most despised group by the public. And this is how things should be a sign for any regime, that nothing stays as it is. And it's you should not be taken by the picture of the crowds who are raising your picture now, because they did that for so many regimes before you, and that really didn't help them when their time came. The problem is the following regimes always seem to get, what I would say, drunk on this moment and not really look to the past. And the past really should, it's impossible that it gets recreated despite the serious attempts. But I just cannot believe that this will be, this will sort of stay fixed, or the current order will really just dump everything else. I think more than ever, Egypt needs this documentation. And yes, as an Egyptian, you will always have some sort of role, whether you're on the street protesting or documenting, but you just cannot help but have your own values and your own standards and have your own opinions and things, because this is the country that you belong to, and this is the future that you're trying to help shape for the others. So as an Egyptian, of course, I was there in Tahrir as a protester, and like many millions of young Egyptians who were there. But that my current work as a photojournalist does not stop me from having my own opinions and expressing them freely and hoping for a better Egypt for everyone. I think that the current government is using media very, very it remains its most important tool. And we've seen how the public and private media has turned into, unfortunately, very, very unprofessional outlets that have really only been broadcasting the only one rhetoric, the only one line that is forced upon by the state, which makes the presence of independent journalists very important. Journalists who are out there on the street, whether they're citizen journalists or professionals, but people who are out there to report what is happening and to try and challenge the current the state media and the state rhetoric, because this is always the most important fight. You know, the images and the videos and the propaganda and the counter propaganda. And this is what, as a professional journalist, I try to do. I do not. I mean, I work for various outlets, and when I go out there on the street, I try to keep my own opinions and my own activism aside, because I am out there to report on what is happening, and without really sticking to one line or rhetoric. And the problem in Egypt, I've always thought, is that the truth is always sort of lost in the middle, and it needs people who are there and who try to push this very this middle, like I said, out for those who are being lost between the state propaganda or the other coin of the other side of the coin, who also report things, but also from one side. We need people who are there to report on what is happening just for the sake of that, and this is what I hope to continue doing. Thanks, Robert. No problem. Pleasure. Thank you. Bye bye.